Welcome back, family, to Gamecocks Hoops with Coop. If you're new here, our mission is simply to grow the game of women's basketball, starting with our Lady Gamecocks. And family, we picked up another dub versus Ole Miss. But let me say this clearly right up front. If you watch this game on TV, or you just glanced at the box score, you saw the results, but you didn't fully see the reason. ESPN GameDay was in town. SEC title implications were on the line. The building was packed. The lights were bright. And yes, the final score did say Our Lady Gamecocks 85, Ole Miss 48. But the story of this game wasn't loud. It was actually quiet. And that's what made it powerful. Watching this game live, it was obvious this wasn't just any old blowout. It was a reveal. Hence the title of this video, Why ESPN GameDay versus Ole Miss quietly reveals South Carolina's real strength. And the word quietly matters because the real strength, it didn't scream. It showed. And the one word I found that explains how this game unfolded is spotlight. So let's walk through it letter by letter, because when the lights get brighter, some teams change and other teams get exposed. Let's begin with the first letter S. S stood for stage. ESPN GameDay doesn't just show up anywhere. They show up when something matters, and with national cameras, legends like Asia Wilson in the building, and a share of the regular season SEC title on the line, this was a big moment for us, right? But what stood out immediately was how calm our Lady Gamecocks were. No rush possessions, no emotional swings, no forcing shots to rise to the moment. The huddles were steady, the pace was controlled, and we weren't playing for the cameras. We were playing our game. And that's how you know you're watching a championship level program, because pressure doesn't create habits, it reveals them. And our Lady Gamecocks habits were already built for this stage. The P in spotlight stood for paint, because this is where the foundation of the win was laid. Joyce Edwards finished with 21 points. We know Big Joyce showed up in a big way. And Medina, Big Mama Okai, added 17 points and 10 rebounds for her 18th double-double of the season, while also going 3 for 3 from the three-point range. I know everybody's saying, who can guard Tessa? But hey, Medina needs her own song now. Who can guard Medina? Because, man, she is lighting that thing. I ain't know if I was watching Steph Curry or what, but Medina is shooting the leather off the ball right now. And on TV, you see the points, but watching this thing from the fourth row, you can see control. Joyce didn't rush anything. She carved out space and finished through contact. Okot demanded attention every time she touched the ball with deep seals and patient repos. And now with her extending that thing to the three-point line, boy, it's going to put some teams in a world of trouble. She had calm finishes, and Ole Miss had to choose between protecting the rim or giving up clean looks elsewhere, and she made them pay. And we saw on Sunday, neither option worked, because when you control the paint, you control the pace, confidence, and shot quality. And our Lady Gamecocks dictated the terms of this game from the inside out. The O in spotlight is for Ole Miss Erase. And this is about the entire offense, not one player. Ole Miss finished with a total, that's right, a total of 48 points through 4 quarters. And it didn't happen by accident. Their spacing collapsed, their timing disappeared, and their sets never fully developed. And they have been playing a lot of games in a short period of time. I think it's like 3 games in the last 6 or 7 days. But look, it wasn't all them. That Gamecock defense came to play. Our Lady Gamecocks were early to spots, active to gaps, and disciplined in rotation. This wasn't gambling defense. This was connected defense. Ole Miss wasn't getting the shots they wanted. They were taking shots that we allowed. Late in the shot clock jumpers, drives into traffic, and passes were thrown just a half second late. And that's what it looks like when an offense gets erased by 5 players moving together. The T in spotlight is for turning point, because blowouts don't arrive suddenly, they're built. Early in the second quarter, if you guys remember, Ole Miss was still hanging around. The score didn't look crazy just yet, and the game still kind of felt competitive. Then that stretch came right before the half. I think it was like a 17-5 run, and that's when the game quietly broke, and each defensive stop got louder. Each South Carolina basket felt heavier. Ole Miss started to hesitate, and we started settling in, and that run wasn't about one big shot. It was about discipline, stacking on top of discipline, stops turning into confidence, and confidence turning into separation. And by the time halftime arrived, the truth of this game had already been told. The letter L in our word spotlight, it stood for lockdown. Ole Miss came into this game with Cody McMahon, a 20-point scorer. I think she's third in the SEC, one of the most aggressive offensive players in the SEC. And by the end of the game, y'all guess how many points she had? 2 points. 2 points for the whole game on 0 for 9 shooting. And the name that matters here is Raven Johnson. Seatbelt game was on full display because watching Raven defend live is completely different than watching it on TV. Every catch was contested early. Every first dribble was angled. Every passing lane was challenged. She didn't gamble. She didn't reach. She slid her feet, anticipated, and stayed connected. Raven forced Cody McMahon to think instead of react. If you guys watched the post-game press conference where Coach Yo, Ole Miss's head coach, was speaking, she gave Raven credit saying that she's probably the best point guard in the nation in her opinion because she's seen up close what doesn't always go on those stat lines. Raven is an absolute dog out there on the defensive end. And when scorers have to think too much, the possession is already lost. And this wasn't flashy defense. It was professional level work. Footwork, balance, quickness, discipline. And Raven turned a 20-point per game scorer into a bystander without needing any double teams or any extra help. By the end of the second quarter, you could already feel where this game was headed. Joyce Edwards and Medina Okot, like we said earlier, controlled the interior. Raven Johnson controlled the perimeter. Everyone else kind of filled the gaps. Ole Miss was reacting, and our Lady Gamecocks were dictating. And that's why everything that happened after the half wasn't about discovery. It was about confirmation, which leads us into the next letter, I in Spotlight, which stood for identity. This is where this game stops being about Ole Miss and starts being about us, because identity is what shows up when the moment doesn't ask you to do more. It asks you to do what you already do with more discipline. And this was not a night where everybody needed to score 30 points. It was a night where everyone needed to do their job and trust the work. Raven didn't need to have a big offensive night to control the game. Joyce didn't need to force anything to prove she was the best player on the floor. Medina Okot didn't need to rush because her presence alone bent the defense. Everyone played within themselves. That's the quiet power of a team that knows who they are. You could see it in how possessions were handled. No panic, no freelancing, no hunting for individual moments. Our Lady Gamecocks played like a group that understands the value of roles. And when roles are clear, confidence lasts longer than energy, and identity shows up in sacrifice, because defense first teams ask their best athletes to give effort before credit. And that's not glamorous, but it's sustainable. If you guys watch Coach Staley post-conference also, she's saying, hey, when players come to South Carolina, they do have to sacrifice for the benefit of the team. They can't go off and get 30, 40 points, but they sacrifice to reach the greater goal, which is to win championships and move the team forward. Raven accepted the hardest assignment and treated it like business. Joyce accepted help defense and trusted that our offense would come naturally. Okot accepted double teams and punished them with patience. Listen, identity is doing uncomfortable things early so the comfortable things show up late. And that's exactly what we saw. Moving on to the letter G in Spotlight, and this for the game ended early, because some blowouts lie to you, but this one didn't. Emotionally, this game was over long before it was mathematically. There are games where the final score looks bad, but the game was competitive deep into the fourth quarter, and this game wasn't one of those. By the early part of the third quarter, Ole Miss wasn't running offense anymore. They were running hope. Shots got quicker, Decisions got rushed. Passes were thrown a little earlier than they needed to be. And if you ever played basketball, you know exactly what that looks like. That's when legs get tired a little faster than they should, and the rim starts feeling smaller and smaller. Meanwhile, our Lady Gamecocks were calm, substitutions were smooth, communication was clear, rotations were crisp, and it wasn't loud, it wasn't emotional, it was controlled. And that's how games end early without ever being announced, because blowouts aren't really about humiliation, they're about control. And our Lady Gamecocks didn't embarrass Ole Miss. Ole Miss is still a great quality team. We just removed the illusion that the game was still competitive. And that's the important difference, because when a team realizes they're not getting clean looks, not getting downhill, not getting to their spots, the game starts to feel longer than the clock says it is. And that's exactly what happened here. The next letter in our word spotlight is H, and it stood for have told the truth. Because if you really understand basketball, you didn't need the final score to know where this game was headed. Body language doesn't lie. The shot quality of teams don't lie. The defensive urgency doesn't lie. There's a moment early in the third quarter in games like this where one team is trying to speed up things to create momentum and the other team is slowing things down to suffocate it. And about 3 possessions into that dynamic, everyone knows which team is which. And from that point forward, everything else is confirmation. That's when one team start looking at the scoreboard after every miss and the other team start to look at the bench to see who is checking in next. And that's where the air quietly leaves the building for one side. Moving on to the last letter T in our word spotlight, it stood for tone for March, because this is why this game matters beyond one night. This wasn't about Ole Miss, it was about habits. This game to me really showed our Lady Gamecocks habits are built for that time of the year. We can win in the paint, we can win with defense, we can win with composure, we can win without chasing stats. And that's really postseason basketball. That's tournament basketball, that's grown woman basketball. And before we close, let's talk about Raven Johnson one more time. If you're a scorer and you see Raven Johnson checking in, that's when you start thinking about how much energy you really have left, because every possession with her is work. Not flashy work, but uncomfortable work. She turns games into mental tests, and when scorers get frustrated, they stop trusting their reads, and that's when the defense has already won. And that's really why box scores never fully capture her impact, because her value shows up in hesitation, in spacing that never quite looks right, in passes that are just a fraction late. All of that matters at the highest level. And when you kind of sit back and look at everything, that's what this entire game represented. The spotlight didn't make our Lady Gamecocks louder, it made us clearer, and clarity is powerful, because teams that rely on energy eventually run out. LSU. And teams that rely on identity don't. ESPN GameDay didn't change our Lady Gamecocks, it confirmed us. This wasn't just a win, it was a warning, because when the lights get brighter, we don't play different. We play cleaner, we play calmer, we play connected. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button. I want you to drop a comment below and tell me what moment told you the game was over before the score did. Was it the defense? Was it the way we attacked the paint? Was it that stretch right before the half, the 17-5 run? I'll be in the comments. Talk to me, I'll talk back. And be sure to subscribe to this channel if you're interested in growing the game of women basketball, starting with our Lady Gamecocks. Y'all be blessed, and as always, go Gamecocks.